The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the green lawn of the open park. A small crowd gathered around a round table covered in bright cloth, balloons floating above in the gentle breeze. Friends and family smiled and laughed as they waited for the special surprise. James stood near the edge of the circle, his heart racing with both excitement and worry. He tried to ignore the strange hum that grew louder with each passing second. Then the sky shivered with light, and a hush fell over the people. Everyone held their breath as a silver shape appeared, small at first, then growing bigger with a slow grace. The craft looked like a tier of shining metal, its surface smooth and alive with tiny pulses of light. It glided down without a sound beyond the soft hum, stopping just above the lawn. The light formed a narrow beam that reached down to the grass. Inside the beam stood a figure wrapped in a soft glow, her form hidden by a folded cloth of silver fabric. Nearby scientists rushed forward with thin tools and glowing monitors mounted on wheeled carts. They spoke in low voices as they scanned her body with beams of sound and light. James watched every moment as though time had slowed. His eyes shone with wonder and fear at the same time. He clenched his fists at his sides, trying to hold on to his nerves. When a soft voice spoke through hidden speakers, the silence broke. "James Carter," it said in a gentle tone that sounded both warm and strange. "Your gift has arrived," the voice added, and the beam began to widen. The silver cloth slipped away as the light folded like petals of a flower. When the cloth fell to the ground, the alien woman stood naked in pure light. She was tall and slender with skin that gleamed like pearl under the sun. Her hair fell in waves of soft white that reached the ground. Her eyes were wide and bright as twin moons in the night sky. She raised her hand and touched her cheek, blinking as if she saw the world for the first time. The beam vanished in a flash of light, leaving only the alien woman and James in its place. James stepped closer, guided by an assistant who pointed to a clear glass chamber at the center of the lawn. The chamber looked like a tall cylinder with a soft cushion inside. The alien woman walked forward and entered the cylinder without fear. She sat on the cushion and closed her eyes as the glass sealed with a gentle hiss. Warm mist filled the chamber, swirling around her like a silent wave. Onlookers pressed their faces against the glass, eager to see what would happen next. Small screens on the chamber's frame lit up with strange symbols of gold and violet. The symbols moved like living code, shifting and twisting in patterns that made no sense to human eyes. A technician named Sarah pointed to a symbol that pulsed faster than the others. She frowned as she tapped a button, sending the image to a larger screen. The crowd leaned in, watching the image change into a glowing map of stars. Though no one could read it, they felt its weight and meaning in their bones. James placed his hand on the glass, and a gentle warmth spread through his palm. In that moment, he knew this gift was more than a present. It was the start of something new. A sudden pulse of light made the glass chamber glow brighter. Then the mist cleared, and the alien woman opened her eyes and looked straight at James. Her gaze held a promise and a warning he could not understand yet. The wind picked up, rustling the balloons and paper plates on the table. A low hum grew in the distance, as if calling them both into the unknown. The crowd held its breath again, waiting for what would come next. James swallowed hard and whispered, "Welcome to Earth," but the alien woman only stared back. The morning sun rose over James's house, painting the sky in soft pink and gold. The glass chamber stood silent on the lawn as the alien woman slept within her mist. Guests drifted away, murmuring questions about what she might do next. Only a few stayed behind, scientists in white coats, notebooks in hand, and Sarah by the control panel. James watched from the porch, his heart thumping with curiosity and worry. He worried she might never speak, and he feared she might never wake. Inside the chamber, the mist swirled around her peaceful face. Her long white hair floated like silk. In water, a faint glow pulsed at her chest, bright and steady as a small star. Sarah tapped keys and watched readings flicker on the screen. She whispered, "Her body is stable, but there is no sign of consciousness yet." James tightened his grip on the railing, wishing he could help her awaken. Around the chamber's base, cables and tubes hummed with quiet energy. Each cable glowed with a soft light that matched the symbols on the glass. James stepped closer, peering through the mist as if he might see a sign. He recalled the moment she first opened her eyes, the promise in her gaze. He wondered if that promise still held true or if it was lost in silence. Suddenly, the power in the neighborhood flickered and dipped. The streetlights blinked and cars paused as engines sputtered. Sarah's voice rose in alarm. "We're losing external power." An assistant dashed to a backup generator and pulled a lever. The generator roared to life and the symbols on the chamber glowed brighter. James exhaled in relief, but his heart raced faster than before. Inside, the alien woman stirred, her chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. Her eyelids fluttered open, and she blinked against the haze. She sat up and looked around as if she saw the world for the first time. Her eyes met James's across the glass, and she smiled with gentle curiosity. He smiled back, though his lips trembled, afraid to speak. She lifted a hand and pressed her palm against the glass. James placed his own hand opposite hers, separated by only a thin pane. A spark of warmth passed through the barrier, filling James with wonder. Sarah leaned in, adjusting her glasses. "She's responsive but silent," James whispered. "Welcome back." His voice barely above a breath. The alien woman nodded, her hair brushing her shoulders like soft feathers. Steam curled around her like a living cloak, hiding any sign of emotion. Sarah pointed to readings on the screen. "Her biosigns are off the charts." James frowned. "Is that good or bad?" Sarah hesitated. "It means she is alive with energy we can't measure fully." James closed his eyes, imagining what that energy might feel like. When he opened them, she was watching him, her gaze calm and deep. He thought he sensed a rhythm in her breath, a language unspoken. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small flower he had picked earlier. He held it up to the glass, its petals bright pink against the steel and mist. The alien woman's eyes lit up, and she leaned forward to smell it. He saw her lips part but heard no sound. Her nostrils flared gently, and her expression softened as if the flower spoke to her. James set the flower at the chamber's base, and it slid inside on a magnetic track. She reached out and caught it. Holding it carefully between two long fingers, she smelled it again. Her eyes fluttering closed for a moment. When she opened them, she stared at James with a question in her gaze. James smiled and shrugged, hoping she understood the simple gift. Sarah whispered, "She understands kindness," and James felt a surge of hope. Suddenly, the chamber's symbols shifted, gold lines tracing new shapes. The screens behind Sarah flickered with code that no one could read. A soft hum grew louder, echoing through the yard like a distant chant. James looked up as the sky darkened with an eclipse of the sun by the craft. A halo of light framed the ship as it hovered without effort. The hum became a pulse, and the ground beneath James's feet trembled. He gripped the railing, trying not to fall. The alien woman rose in the mist, her hair swirling around her like a storm. She stepped forward, glass parting before her, and the mist spilled out. James backed away but held his ground. Watching her move in slow grace, she reached toward him, and their hands met at last, skin against skin. Her touch felt cool as moonlight, yet alive with hidden warmth. She stood before him, silent still, but her eyes spoke of wonder and fear. James bowed his head. "I'm here," he said, and she nodded in return. In that moment, he knew their journey had only just begun. The moon lit the yard in soft silver as James paced beside the silent chamber. Night air was cool but charged with energy. Inside, the alien woman lay still, her hair spread like a silver halo on the cushion. James ran his fingers through his hair, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He remembered the flower and how her eyes had softened at its scent. He wondered if kindness could bridge the gap between their worlds. A sudden hum rose from the chamber's core, steady and deep. Lights along the glass frame flickered from violet to emerald. James's heart leapt as the mist swirled around her body. She shifted beneath the fog, her chest rising in slow rhythm. Then she stirred. Lifting her head like a bird waking at dawn, her eyes opened wide, shining under the chamber lights. She looked directly at James and smiled. Though no sound reached his ears, James pressed his hand to the glass, matching her gaze. A pulse of warmth surged through him, as if her mind had touched his. Suddenly the glass cracked with a sharp line that ran from top to bottom. James jumped back, fearing the chamber would shatter, but the crack glowed with golden light, sealing itself. Like living metal, the broken line formed a pattern like the map of distant stars. James watched in awe as symbols rearranged themselves before his eyes. Without warning, a soft voice echoed in his mind, whispering his name. James, it said, gentle and clear. Stirring emotions he could not name, he froze, eyes wide, heart pounding. The voice spoke again, this time louder, sharing a single word of greeting. Friend, it said. And James felt a flood of relief wash over him. He nodded, though she could not see, welcoming the word into his soul. Across the yard, Sarah gasped and pointed at her console. Red numbers scrolled across the screen, showing a spike in neural activity. Cameras around the chamber captured the moment, their lenses focusing on her lips. James watched as her lips moved, forming words he could hear in his mind. She moved her hand toward her throat, and he sensed her struggle to speak aloud. Suddenly the glass door slid open with a hiss, letting mist spill into the night. She stepped out, tall and serene, each movement graceful as a dance. James held out his hand, and she took it without hesitation. Her skin was cool like morning dew, yet pulsed with living warmth. Sarah and the scientist stared in shock as the two stood face to face. James felt her heartbeat against his palm, slow and steady. Her eyes held a question. Why have you brought me here? But her voice was silent. The thought rose in his mind before he spoke. To learn about each other, he thought. She tilted her head, considering his answer, and he felt her approval like a gentle wave. Behind them, the craft hovered silently, its lights dim but watchful. James glanced up and saw shapes moving on its surface like living creatures. He held her gaze and whispered in his mind, "We will share our worlds." Her lips curved in a soft smile, and she closed her eyes as if savoring his promise. Sarah tapped furiously at her console, trying to decode the symbols still glowing on the chamber glass. James squeezed the alien woman's hand, feeling a surge of confidence. She opened her eyes and spoke again in his mind. Together, and he felt the weight of her hope. The night air hummed with possibility as man and alien stood united under the stars. James knew that this moment would change everything, and he would need asterisk. The laboratory lights hummed as cameras recorded every moment. The alien woman sat in the clear chamber with calm grace. Scientists whispered behind screens, their faces pale with wonder and fear. James watched from the observation room, his breath caught in his throat. Today the world would see her power, and no one knew what would happen next. The host of the live broadcast stepped forward, microphone in hand, eyes bright with excitement. "We bring you the first public interview with our guest from the stars," she announced, and the cameras zoomed in on the chamber. Silence held for a heartbeat. Then the alien woman raised her hand, fingers long and slender like petals of a night bloom. She pointed toward a camera lens, and the image on every screen turned to static, flickering into darkness. Gasps echoed through the lab and across living rooms around the globe. Technicians scrambled to restore the feed. Wires sparked on the control panel, and alarms chirped. In protest, James's heart pounded as he watched the monitors go dark, replaced by swirling black and white noise. Then the laser-thin voice of the alien woman crackled through the speakers, soft and clear. "I am not a show," she said, and the words echoed like distant thunder. The host's face went pale. She swallowed and stammered, We can't hear you." But the cameras remained frozen. In that moment, the alien woman's chamber door hissed open, mist pouring out like silver smoke. She stepped forward onto the glossy floor, each movement fluid and precise. James leapt from his seat and ran toward her, ignoring the protests of the staff. She stood before him, her eyes cool as moonlight, and she spoke again, her voice soft in the silent room. "You brought me here for display." And her words were not anger but quiet sorrow. James shook his head. "No, I brought you here to learn," he said, voice trembling with hope. She studied him for a long moment, then lifted her hand and touched a wounded bird that lay hidden beneath the host's chair, unnoticed until now. Feathers matted with blood, the small creature trembled, and the host screamed, "Get that bird away from me!" But the alien woman's fingers brushed the bird's wing, and a wave of light pulsed from her palm. Bright as a dying star, the bird shivered. Its wings straightened, and soft white feathers replaced the torn ones. It blinked against the harsh lights, then flapped its wings and soared toward the ceiling, disappearing into a ventilation duct. The scientist stared in shock, glasses fogged, jaws dropped. James felt tears sting his eyes. "She healed it," he whispered. Pride and fear meeting in his chest, the alien woman turned away, her tattoos glowing along her arms in patterns of violet fire. Symbols shifted and danced across her skin, forming shapes no human knew. Sarah pressed buttons at her console, voice shaking. "Her biometrics, they're an overload. We can't measure this." The alien woman stepped outside the lab, the door opening at her will, cables sparking and melting away before her. James ran after her, calling her name, but she had vanished. Into the night, searchlights swept the grounds. Guards ran with rifles raised, cameras rolled. Newsfeeds screamed her escape. James reached the last corridor and found glowing footprints leading toward a service hatch. Each print glowed faintly, then winked out like dying stars. He crouched and touched the floor, warmth pulsing where her foot had been. His heart thundered with panic. Where did she go? He shouted, but only silence answered. Outside, the wind carried a soft hum, as if the world itself had a heartbeat. James climbed through the hatch onto the service catwalk above the lab. He peered into the dark alley beyond, shadows shifting. Like living things, a single glow pulsed at the end of the alley, then vanished, leaving only the echo of her power. He climbed down and followed, each step careful on the cold concrete. Around the corner, a burst of light illuminated the alien woman as she pressed her hand against the brick wall, leaving a shimmer in midair. She turned to him, her hair drifting like smoke, eyes burning with secrets. James held up his hands. "Come back with me," he pleaded, voice raw. She hesitated, then touched her neck and closed her eyes. Sending a pulse of warmth through his chest, he felt images. Flicker distant worlds, burning skies and alien cities of silver. He stumbled back, overwhelmed, the vision fading as quickly as it came. She opened her eyes and whispered without sound, "Not yet." And then she turned and ran. James watched her go, fear clutching his heart, but his mind burned with one thought: he would find her again, no matter what her power could do. The night sky stretched above him, silent witness to her hidden abilities. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I will not let you go," and the stars seemed to answer in glowing code, guiding him into the unknown. Night had fallen, and the sky was dark except for the bright searchlights of the drones hovering above James's house. He stood at the edge of his yard, heart pounding as the mechanical hum grew louder with each passing second. Red lasers swept the grass, cutting narrow lines of light that danced across the trees. James hushed his breath and crept toward the fence, remembering the glowing footprints she left behind. Each footstep had burned a pale blue glow into the ground, fading only seconds later into the night. He followed the faint shimmer down the sidewalk, clutching his jacket around him. The drones shifted in formation, their cameras swiveling like watchful eyes. James ducked into a side gate and pressed himself against the wooden boards. He whispered her name, voice low, hoping she might answer. Around the corner, the alley lay in shadow, but he saw a soft glow on the brick wall. She had traced arrows of light to show him the way, each one pulsing with a gentle rhythm. James moved quickly from arrow to arrow, each glow guiding him deeper into the maze. Of backstreets, broken glass crunched under his feet, echoing in the silence. He paused when he heard distant voices shouting orders over radios. Footsteps approached soldiers in dark uniforms, scanned with handheld lights. James pressed himself against the damp wall, breath held. The soldiers passed by, unaware of James slipping past them. He exhaled slowly and followed the arrows once more. Ahead he saw her standing under a flickering street lamp, hair shining. Like silver threads, she raised her hand and the lamp stabilized. Burning steady and bright, James ran to her, relief flooding his chest. But the light dipped suddenly as a drone swooped low, engines roaring. The drone's targeting laser locked onto her, painting a red dot on her white coat. She stepped forward, calm and unafraid. And her tattoos glowed with violet fire. Energy pulsed from her fingers, and the drone jolted, its engines sparking. Metal groaned as the drone spiraled away, crashing into a heap of rubble. James reached for her hand, his voice trembling. "Are you safe?" he thought. She paused and placed her hand against his forehead. A rush of images flooded his mind, giant rings of fire, worlds in shadow, armies of silver ships. He staggered. Vision blurred as he saw her home world burning in cosmic war. She pulled back and his eyes met hers, filled with sorrow and determination. James nodded, understanding at last the weight she carried. Together they turned and slipped into a narrow tunnel beneath the street. The walls glowed faintly with her light, guiding them away from danger. Behind them, the drone searched in vain as the alley fell dark once again. James held her close, ready to face whatever lay ahead with her by his side. The sky was pale gray as James crept through the silent warehouse district. He clutched the alien woman's hand, her skin cool and steady against his palm. They moved between rusted crates and broken windows, shadows stretching long in the dawn light. James remembered the promise he made, to protect her at all costs. Behind them, the city stirred with guards and drones, searching every corner. He led her toward a hidden loading dock where his friend Mark waited in secret. Mark's face was tight with fear when he saw them emerge from the alley. He guided them inside a dusty van and locked the doors with a click. The alien woman sank onto a worn seat, tattoos on her arms dimming like dying stars. James turned to Mark and whispered, "Thank you for helping us." Mark nodded, eyes flicking toward the woman as if he could not believe she was real. They drove away in silence, tires humming over cracked pavement. James felt hope rising. At last they were safe, or so he thought, that night. In the dim light of James's apartment, Mark paced the floor. He held a small device that blinked red with incoming messages. James watched him with growing unease. Sensing tension coil between them, Mark finally spoke, voice low and urgent. "I sold your location to the military." James froze, heart pounding, disbelief and anger crashing through him. He stared at Mark's trembling hands and the device glittering like a trap. The alien woman stood behind James, silent and still, eyes glowing faintly. James confronted Mark, voice shaking with hurt. "Why would you do that?" Mark's face crumpled, tears shining. "I wanted fame. The price was too good to refuse." James felt betrayal cut deep, but his mind turned to the woman beside him. He knew he must choose loyalty to a friend or to the being who trusted him. Mark took a step back as James reached out to the alien woman. She raised her hand and a soft light gathered around her wrist. Energy coalesced into a dome of violet shimmer that grew in a heartbeat. Guards burst through the door, rifles raised, but the dome held them at bay. Bullets struck the shield and fell harmlessly like raindrops on stone. James guided the alien woman toward the balcony. Breathless with relief, below, vehicles screeched to a halt and soldiers yelled for surrender. James lowered his voice and whispered, "We must go now." She nodded and her dome collapsed into a shower of sparks. Mark staggered forward, guilt and fear warring in his eyes. James hesitated, but did not look back, leading her into the waiting night. The first rays of sunlight touched the horizon as they slipped into darkness. In the fading glow, the alien woman spoke for the first time in full voice. Her words were soft but urgent. "They know our path," she said. James held her close and vowed silently to protect her always. They vanished into the dawn, bound by trust forged in betrayal. The wind tugged at James's hair as he climbed the narrow fire escape to the rooftop. Her hand was warm in his, guiding him with gentle strength. Above them, the night sky was alive with stars that pulsed like distant lanterns. She led him to the edge where the city lights stretched out like a sea of fire. James's heart raced as he followed her gaze toward the horizon. There, just above the tallest tower, dozens of silver ships hovered in perfect formation. Each ship was shaped like a crescent moon, its hull glowing with soft blue light. James swallowed hard. Awed by their silent presence, she turned to him, her eyes reflecting the fleet. He felt her hope and fear swirl inside him like a storm. She pressed her hand to his chest, and he felt a tremor of energy beneath his shirt. Images flashed in his minefields of stars, planets aflame, and armies of silent warriors. He gasped and clutched her hand tighter, steadying himself against the shock. She spoke in his mind, her voice a soothing whisper. "These are my people," James nodded, slowly, his breath catching. "And you brought me here for this?" She bowed her head, faint light tracing runes across her cheeks. He looked back at the ships as they formed the circle above them. A low hum filled the air, growing in volume until it felt alive beneath his feet. She lifted her hand, and a beacon, a violet light burst from her palm. The ships responded, beams of light shooting down to meet hers. In that moment, the air quivered and a swirling portal opened between them. Its surface shined with colors no human name could describe. She turned to James, eyes bright with longing. "Step through with me," she urged. James hesitated, fear and desire warring in his chest. He thought of Earth, of friends, of home, of the life he knew. He thought of her kindness, her trust, her lonely journey. He stepped forward, hand in hers, toward the swirling light. But the beacon flickered, and the portal quaked as though unsure. She frowned with worry. As ships above shifted and lights dimmed, a distant shout rang out from below. The military had found them. James looked at her, torn. "I can't leave yet," he whispered. Her hand tightened around his. "Then, show me your world," she replied. He lifted his other hand and pointed toward the endless city below. She smiled, soft and radiant. As her people's ships began to fade from view, the portal closed with a gentle sigh, leaving only stars and silent promise. James drew her close. "We will learn together," he vowed. She rested her head on his shoulder, her glow blending with the city lights. Above them, the sky was quiet once more, but everything had changed.